In the quiet African village of Mtenje, nestled between vast golden fields and towering baobab trees, lived a young woman named Zobola. She was known for her hard work and resilience, but life had never been easy for her. Years ago, she lost her mother, the only person who had ever truly loved her. Since then, her world had been filled with loneliness and silent battles. Zobola lived with her father and her stepmother Nthanda, a woman who had never shown her kindness. Though her father was a good man, he was often too busy working in the fields to see the truth. Zobola was nothing more than a servant in her own home. Nthanda's heart belonged only to her own daughter, Mfatso, who was given the best of everything, while Zobola was left with scraps. From dawn till dusk, Zobola worked tirelessly. She swept the dusty floors, fetched water from the distant well, and prepared meals she barely got to enjoy. But no matter how much she did, Nthanda's sharp tongue always found a way to make her feel unworthy. The villagers noticed but remained silent, fearing Nthanda's wrath. Yet, despite the hardships, Zobola felt something stirring in the air. She couldn't explain it, but she sensed that her life was about to change. Shadows lurked in the corners of her home, whispers in the night, secret glances, and locked doors. Something was happening, something hidden beneath the surface of their quiet village life. And deep in her heart, Zobola knew a storm was coming. Life in Mtenje village was never fair for Zobola. Every morning, before the sun even rose, she was already up, sweeping the yard, fetching water from the faraway well, and preparing breakfast. But no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough for her stepmother, Nthanda. She always found something to criticize. "You missed a spot. This food is too plain," or "You are too slow." It didn't matter if Zobola was tired, or if her hands were sore from scrubbing clothes. Nthanda never showed her kindness. Meanwhile, Mfatso, Nthanda's daughter, lived like a queen in the same house. She never lifted a finger to help. While Zobola worked under the burning sun, Mfatso sat in the shade, eating fresh fruits, braiding her hair, and giggling with her friends. If there were any chores to be done, Nthanda would always say, "That's Zobola's job." It was as if Zobola was invisible, except when there was work to do. Zobola's father, lost in his daily struggles, barely noticed the unfairness. When he was around, Nthanda pretended to be kind, acting as if she cared for Zobola. But as soon as he left, her true nature returned. If Zobola dared to rest for even a moment, Nthanda's sharp voice would cut through the air like a knife. "Are you lazy? Do you think this house will clean itself?" Despite the pain, Zobola never complained. She swallowed her tears and kept moving, hoping that one day things would change. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Her stepmother would never love her, no matter how much she tried. At first, it was just small things that could easily be ignored. But as days passed, Zobola started to notice strange behaviors from her stepmother, Nthanda. It began with whispered phone calls late at night. Zobola would wake up to the soft murmur of Nthanda's voice, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Whenever she tried to listen closely, the conversation would suddenly stop. If Zobola walked into the room, Nthanda would quickly put her phone away, her face stiff with irritation. Then came the late-night outings. Nthanda, who was usually strict about staying indoors after dark, started sneaking out of the house. She would dress up in her best clothes, spray herself with perfume, and disappear into the night. Sometimes she would return with a strange glow on her face, like someone who had just heard good news. Other times, she came back looking nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if someone was following her. But the most shocking part was the sudden appearance of expensive gifts in the house. A new gold necklace shimmered around Nthanda's neck, even though Zobola knew her stepmother had never owned anything that fancy before. A fine silk scarf was casually draped over a chair, its bright colours standing out in their simple home. There were even boxes of sweet-smelling soaps and lotions, things that Nthanda had never bought before. Where were these things coming from? Zobola's heart began to race with suspicion. Her stepmother was hiding something big, but what? And more importantly, who was she hiding it from? One quiet evening in Mtenje, as the moon cast silver light over the village, Zobola sat outside, finishing her chores. The air was cool, and the night was peaceful, until she heard whispers coming from inside the house. It was Nthanda's voice, low and urgent, but she wasn't alone. A man's voice answered her, deep and serious. Zobola's heart pounded. Who was this man? Her father was still at work, and no visitors had come to their home. Slowly, she crept toward the window, pressing herself against the wall to listen. I told you not to call me at this time, Nthanda hissed. We need to talk, the man said. You promised me. There was a pause. Zobola could hear Nthanda pacing the room. When she spoke again, her voice was sharp but nervous. Not here. Not now. You don't understand how dangerous this is. Dangerous? What was dangerous? Zobola felt a chill run down her spine. She peeked through a small crack in the window, but the dim light made it hard to see. However, she caught a glimpse of Nthanda's trembling hands as she clutched her scarf. She was afraid. The man sighed. I won't wait forever, Nthanda. You know what's at stake. Zobola gasped softly, covering her mouth. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure. Her stepmother was hiding a secret, and it was bigger than she had imagined. But without proof, who would believe her? The sun hung high over Mtenje, casting golden light over the crowded marketplace. The air buzzed with the chatter of vendors calling out prices, the clatter of pots and baskets, and the rich aroma of roasted maize and fried fish. Zobola moved through the maze of stalls, carefully balancing a woven basket on her hip. Her father had sent her to buy cooking oil, and like always, she carried out her duties without question. Just as she was about to turn toward the oil vendor, something caught her eye. A flash of blue and gold. Her heart skipped. She knew that wrapper, Nthanda. But what was her stepmother doing here? She had told everyone she was at home resting. Zobola frowned and took a step closer, moving carefully between the stalls, staying out of sight. Curiosity gripped her, and then she saw him. A tall man, well-dressed, standing dangerously close to Nthanda in the shaded corner of the marketplace. His skin glowed in the sunlight, and his crisp white shirt looked too fine for an ordinary villager. But what shook Zobola to her core was the way Nthanda smiled at him. Soft, warm, different. A smile she had never once seen her stepmother give her father. Then came the touch. The man's hand grazed Nthanda's waist, and instead of pulling away, she leaned into him. They whispered to each other, laughing softly, lost in their own world. A world they didn't want anyone else to see. Zobola's grip tightened around her basket. Her breath caught in her throat. This was not just a casual meeting. This was something deeper, something forbidden. She ducked behind a stack of dried maize, her heart racing. She had suspected something for weeks. The whispered phone calls, the sudden gifts, the late-night outings. And now, here was the proof. Nthanda was having an affair. For a moment, Zobola felt frozen. If she stepped out, she could confront them right there. But something stopped her. Would anyone believe her? Her father loved Nthanda, and Mfatso trusted her mother blindly. If she spoke up now, would they call her a liar? She took one last look at them. Nthanda's fingers lightly brushed the man's hand, her lips curling into a secretive smile. It was clear. This was not the first time they had met like this. Zobola turned away, her stomach churning. She had uncovered the truth. But now she faced an even bigger question. What would she do with it? That evening, Zobola sat on the edge of her sleeping mat, her heart pounding in her chest. She had seen it with her own eyes. Nthanda laughing, holding hands, and whispering with another man. She couldn't keep this secret any longer. Someone had to know. Someone had to believe her. And so, she decided to tell Mfatso. She found her stepsister outside, braiding her hair under the dim light of an oil lamp. The air was still, and the sounds of crickets filled the night. Taking a deep breath, Zobola stepped forward. Mfatso, she began, her voice low but firm. I need to tell you something. Mfatso barely looked up. What now? She sighed. Zobola hesitated for a second, then spoke the truth. It's about your mother. I saw her today. She was at the market, with a man. Mfatso's fingers froze mid-braid. What? She said sharply, finally turning to face Zobola. Zobola swallowed hard. I saw them. She was holding his hand. They were laughing. I think... She hesitated, then forced the words out. I think she's having an affair. For a moment, there was silence. Then Mfatso burst into laughter. You? Saying this about my mother? She shook her head. You must be joking. I'm serious, Mfatso. I saw it with my own eyes. Mfatso stood up, her face darkening. Number, you think you saw something, but you're wrong. My mother would never do that. Zobola's chest tightened. I know what I saw. She's lying to all of us. But Mfatso's blind loyalty was unshaken. Her eyes filled with anger. You're just jealous, she spat. You've always been jealous because my mother loves me and not you. Zobola felt a sharp sting in her heart. This isn't about jealousy. I'm trying to protect this family. But Mfatso refused to listen. She folded her arms and shook her head. Stay away from me, Zobola, and stay away from my mother. With that, she stormed off, leaving Zobola standing in the dim light, alone. Zobola clenched her fists. No one believed her, not even Mfatso. But deep down, she knew one thing. The truth had a way of coming out, no matter how hard someone tried to deny it. Zobola couldn't stay silent anymore. Mfatso refused to believe her, but maybe, just maybe, her father would. He was a good man, a hard-working man. He loved his family. He deserved to know the truth. That night, as her father sat outside on a wooden stool, cleaning his farming tools, Zobola gathered her courage. The air was thick with silence, the only sound coming from the distant chirping of crickets. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. Father, I need to talk to you. He looked up, his tired eyes filled with curiosity. What is it, my child? Zobola swallowed hard. It's about Nthanda. I saw her today at the market. She hesitated, then forced herself to say it. She was with a man. They were laughing, holding hands. Father, I think… She paused, her heart pounding. I think she is seeing another man behind your back. Her father's face darkened instantly. His forehead creased, his grip tightening around the cloth in his hands. What are you saying, Zobola? Before she could answer, a sharp voice interrupted. She is lying. Zobola turned and saw Nthanda standing in the doorway. Her face was twisted with anger, but her eyes held something else. Fear. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? Nthanda stormed inside, her voice shaking. After everything I have done for you. Her father stood up, his expression unreadable. Nthanda, is this true? Nthanda let out a bitter laugh. And you believe this girl? She turned to Zobola, her lips curling into a cruel smirk. You have always hated me, haven't you? Always jealous because I love Mfatso more than you. That's not true, Zobola's voice cracked. I saw you. I know what I saw. Nthanda gasped, shaking her head in mock pain. Listen to her, she cried, turning to her husband. She is trying to turn you against me, just like she tried to turn Mfatso against me earlier. She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice, making herself look weak. You know how she feels about me. She wants to ruin this family. Zobola's father hesitated. Zobola's heart sank. Number. He couldn't believe her, could he? Her father exhaled deeply, rubbing his forehead. Zobola, are you sure about this? His voice was heavy, full of doubt. Before Zobola could speak, Nthanda faked a sob, wiping non-existent tears from her eyes. I worked so hard for this family, she whispered, her voice breaking. And now this girl wants to destroy my name. Zobola looked at her father desperately. Father, please, you have to believe me. He let out another sigh. His tired eyes flickered between Zobola and Nthanda. Then he shook his head. I don't know what to believe. Nthanda saw her chance. She turned to him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Don't let this girl fill your head with poison, she whispered. She just wants to create problems. Zobola clenched her jaw, anger and frustration boiling inside her. Nthanda had won this round, but Zobola knew one thing for sure. The truth could only stay hidden for so long. The morning sun bathed the village in golden light as Zobola swept the front yard. The air was calm, but something felt different. A strange feeling sat in her chest, like a storm waiting to break. Then, she saw a man approaching their house. He was a messenger, dressed in a dusty brown coat, carrying a small stack of letters. Zobola stopped sweeping. They rarely received letters. Who could it be from? The man reached the doorstep and called out, "A letter for Nthanda." Zobola's hands tightened around the broom. Nthanda, who would be writing to her? Before she could react, Nthanda rushed out of the house. Her movements were sharp, almost panicked. She snatched the letter from the messenger's hands before he could say another word. Zabola's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of the envelope. The handwriting was neat, unfamiliar, and in the corner, there was no official stamp, no village marking. This was not a normal letter. Nthanda clutched it to her chest as if protecting a secret. Her face had changed. Her usual confidence had vanished, replaced by something else. Fear. Zabola pretended to look away, but she watched closely. Nthanda's fingers trembled slightly as she turned and hurried inside, hiding the letter in the folds of her wrapper. Something was wrong. Zabola could feel it in her bones. As Nthanda disappeared inside, Zabola made a silent promise to herself. She had to find out what was in that letter, because whatever it was, Nthanda didn't want anyone else to see it. Zabola couldn't get the letter out of her mind. Nthanda was hiding something big. The way she had clutched that envelope, the fear in her eyes, it was clear she was keeping a secret, and Zabola was determined to uncover it. That evening, as the sky turned dark and the village quieted, Zabola saw Nthanda leave the house. She moved quickly, throwing a shawl over her shoulders and stepping carefully onto the dirt path. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Zabola's heart pounded. This was it. This was her chance to find out the truth. Staying low, she followed her stepmother from a safe distance. Nthanda walked with urgency, glancing around nervously, as if making sure no one was watching. But Zabola was there, hidden in the shadows. After a few minutes, Nthanda stopped near the edge of the village, behind a large mango tree. And then he appeared, the same man from the marketplace, tall, well-dressed, with a confident air. He smiled at Nthanda, and she smiled back. The same soft, secretive smile that Zabola had seen before. Zabola felt her stomach twist. So, it was true. She reached into her pocket and pulled out an old phone. Carefully, she raised it and snapped a few photos. The dim moonlight wasn't much, but it was enough. This was the proof she needed. She watched as Nthanda and the man whispered, their hands brushing against each other. Their laughter was low, but filled with something dangerous, a love they were trying to keep hidden. Zabola took one last photo before slipping away, her hands trembling. The truth was no longer a suspicion. It was real, and now she had the evidence to expose it. The entire village gathered in the open square that afternoon. The air buzzed with excitement and chatter, but Zabola's heart pounded for a different reason. She stood among the crowd, her hands clenched at her sides, waiting. She knew something big was about to happen. Her father sat near the elders, his face calm, unaware of what was coming. Nthanda sat beside him, her usual proud and composed self. She greeted the neighbors with smiles, pretending as if nothing was wrong. But then, a stranger stepped forward. The murmurs of the crowd died down as the man, dressed in a simple brown robe, walked straight towards Zabola's father. Everyone turned to watch. Nthanda's smile faded instantly. The man stopped in front of them and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His voice was loud and clear. "You need to see this." Silence. Zabola's father hesitated, then slowly took the paper. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words. His face changed. At first, confusion, then shock, then rage. Nthanda shot up from her seat. "What is this? Who is this man?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The stranger turned to her, his face emotionless. "You know exactly who I am." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. Zabola's father gripped the paper tighter, his hands trembling. The proof was there. The affair was real. "Nthanda," he said, his voice dangerously low. "What have you done?" Nthanda's breath hitched. She looked around desperately, but there was no escape. Zabola stepped forward, her voice steady. "I tried to warn you." The villagers stared, some whispering, some shaking their heads. Nthanda had spent years pretending to be the perfect wife, but now, her lies were falling apart. Her perfect image was shattered, and in that moment, everyone saw her for who she truly was. For a moment, there was complete silence. The village square, once filled with laughter and conversation, now stood still. All eyes were on Nthanda. She looked around desperately, her chest rising and falling quickly. "This is a lie," she shouted, her voice shaking. "Someone is trying to ruin my name." But the proof was in her husband's hands. The letter, the photos, the undeniable truth. Zobola's father's face was dark with anger and pain. He had believed in Nthanda for years, trusted her, loved her. Now, she had betrayed him. The villagers started whispering. "So it's true," one woman muttered. "She has been deceiving him all this time." Nthanda's hands trembled as she stepped forward. "My husband, you know me. You know I would never do this," she pleaded. But he didn't speak. He only looked at her with cold disappointment. The stranger, the man from the letter, stepped forward. His voice was calm, but firm. "Deny it all you want, Nthanda, but the truth is out. You cannot hide anymore." The whispers grew louder. Some people shook their heads in disgust. Others turned their backs. The woman who once held power, who once walked through the village with pride, now stood alone. Even Mfatso, her own daughter, looked at her with tears in her eyes. For the first time, she saw her mother's true face. Nthanda's legs felt weak. She turned to her husband one last time. "Please, I can explain." But he looked away. "Leave." His voice was final. "You are no longer welcome in this house." Gasps filled the air. Nthanda had lost everything. Her perfect image was gone. The village she once ruled with her pride now rejected her. And as she stepped back, realizing there was no one left to defend her, she knew this was her downfall. Mfatso stood frozen, watching her mother crumble under the weight of her own lies. The woman she had always trusted, always defended, was not who she thought she was. Her heart pounded as she looked at Zobola, the stepsister she had always ignored, always thought of as jealous, had been telling the truth all along. Guilt washed over her like a heavy wave. Zobola's face was calm, but there was pain in her eyes. She had suffered so much, treated like a servant, ignored and doubted, and yet she had never stopped fighting for the truth. Slowly, Mfatso stepped forward. Her throat was dry, but she forced the words out. "Zobola, I was wrong." Zobola looked at her, surprised. Mfatso's voice cracked. "I should have believed you. I should have listened, but I was blinded by my love for my mother. I see the truth now." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry." For a moment, there was silence. Then Zobola gave a small nod. Forgiveness. Mfatso turned to her mother, who stood alone, her face pale with shock. For the first time in her life, Mfatso saw the selfishness in Nthanda's eyes. She straightened her back, her voice stronger now. "Mother, you always told me to stand by you. But how can I, when you were the one breaking this family apart?" Nthanda gasped. "Mfatso, I did this for us." Mfatso shook her head. "No, you did this for yourself." She stepped back, her decision clear. She would no longer be a blind follower of her mother's lies. The village watched in silence as Mfatso walked toward Zobola. For the first time they stood side by side, not as enemies, but as sisters. The sun rose over Malozi village, casting a golden glow over the small huts and green fields. But for Zobola, this morning felt different. The air was lighter, the silence peaceful, not heavy with secrets and lies like before. Nthanda was gone. Her presence no longer shadowed the house. For the first time in years, Zobola felt free. She stepped outside and took a deep breath. No more being treated like a servant, no more cruelty. The house that once felt like a prison now felt like a home. Her father, though still healing from the betrayal, looked at her with pride. He had doubted her once, but now he saw her for who she truly was. Strong, fearless, and full of light. Even Mfatso, once her greatest rival, was different. She no longer looked at Zobola with jealousy, but with respect. They had started to rebuild their bond, and for the first time, Zobola had a real sister. But Zobola knew her journey wasn't over. She had spent years trapped in a life she didn't choose, but now she had the power to shape her own future. With determination in her heart, she set her sights on her biggest dream, opening her own tailoring shop. She had always been good with her hands, stitching old clothes into something beautiful. Now she wanted to turn that skill into something bigger. The villagers, once whispering about her misfortune, now spoke of her strength. She had faced lies, betrayal, and pain, but in the end, she had won. As she picked up her sewing kit, the warm sun shining on her face, she smiled. This was only the beginning. A new life, a new dream, and this time, she was in control. Because in the end, truth always wins.